Good evening. And tonight is Ace King offsuit on the button. So we have a limp from early position. He's playing 50% of hands right now, but we only have 6 hands here. Since he limped, I'm going to think that he is fairly loose. That he has a medium strength hand. A hand that he's not willing to raise with. And since he limped, I'm going to include in these offsuit broadways here. Probably something like this. I'm going to assume he would have raised queens plus ace queen. But kind of limping with some of these weaker hands. He may actually only be like here. But we're going to go with that. So it's on us. What do we do? I do think we have value here with ace king. I think we do want to raise it. We want to try to get a heads up against this limper. Obviously, if he calls, we're going to have range advantage on him. If we limp, I think the worst case scenario is that both of these players call. Both players are somewhat tight. I guess if we had a loose player that attacks the limpers, you could probably just limp, expecting them to raise, and then you can put in, a big 3-bet with value. Definitely be 3-betting for value, not really bluffing with that. Kind of depends on the player, kind of depends on stack sizes too. With being deeper stacks, I think it's probably better just go ahead and raise and see what happens here. So I raised the 7 big blinds. At this point, I believe I was playing around with my bet sizing. I'm finding that maybe 4 big blinds is getting called too frequently, so just trying to scale it up a little bit more. See what happens. So I raised to 7, and villain 7 calls. So once I raise like that, I'm gonna have to assume that he would get rid of some of these weaker hands, and probably only continue with the stronger hands in his range. So maybe something like that. The pocket pair is looking for set mining. Maybe the suited aces. Again, it's kind of hard to judge because I only have 6 hands on this player. So we're going to cover that up. So what would I have done, just from the big blind? So I think from the big blind, just our default, from our button, our default is just going to be to raise. So even against limpers, we could probably get rid of the kings, some of the suited kings. But, if he's going to fold out quite a few hands, then I think the kings provide some blockers. The king blocks, ace, king, king, queen, some of the king jacks. And all of our aces kind of block a lot of those aces. So if he does continue, he's going to be much weaker. Also, the aces and the kings will block our blinds, which makes it more likely that they'll just fold. So we're going to go with that range versus his range, and you can see that right now his calling range is going to be stronger than our open raise. So their pre-flop range is that pretty tight, 9.65. That is 128 combos. Our range is going to be much wider at 31.2%. 414 combos. So we get a favorable flop, ace, queen, 2. He checks, and I'm going to assume he checks his entire range. So now we have to think about what are we going to c-bet with. I think we're going to be c-betting top pair. Should we do all top pair? So I think if we look at his range, we have to think about what's going to call here. So definitely all the aces are going to call, which I think limits our ability to bet a queen. Because if we have a queen and not an ace, then it's likely that he has an ace. If we have an ace, it makes it less likely that he actually has one. So the question is, what if we bet, and the other part of it is this is the ace of hearts and the queen of hearts. So he doesn't have any of these ace suited hearts. He could have maybe ace jack with the jack of hearts. Could have king queen with maybe the king of hearts. I think if we bet our aces, the only hands that are really going to call are going to be the king queen, ace jack, and then probably these other aces. But it's going to be a whole lot harder for him to have that. Since we have an ace in our hand. Likewise, if we didn't have an ace and we bet, it's going to be more likely that he has one of those aces in his hand. So it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You want to bet that ace. You want to bet our top pair hands, but you know that he probably isn't going to have one, and it's going to limit what he can call with. But if you don't have an ace, then it's like, well, I don't really want to bet because it's more likely that he does. So I'm kind of thinking with the top pair hands, I think we're going to be doing a mixture here. I think for a big part, we're going to probably be checking these top pair type hands. I think we're going to look to try to, even these, the small suited aces, what if we have like ace 3, ace 4, ace 5, we're looking at betting and hoping to get him to fold the better aces. I think if he folds the better aces, it's going to be folding on the turn, so it needs 2 barrels. So I kind of think if we're going to be betting, we're going to be betting these types of hands to try to get him to fold. So that's part value here, because I also think he's going to be able to call with like a queen hand. 2 pairs, definitely betting for value. I think we're looking to get some value, and especially get value from an ace or a queen, or maybe like jacks or tens that'll call at least once. Definitely betting for sets. For our draws, I think we're betting those and these combo draws. Do we have other bluffs in our hands? Yeah, we do. So we've got ace, queen 2. I think we're going to probably be betting these pocket pairs, and I don't think they're going to be for value. I think they're going to be for bluffs, with the idea that we're going to be hoping that if he calls now, that he'll fold on the turn with a favorable turn card. So I think that's probably my betting range. So what happens is I bet, and we're gonna leave it, and we know that I have ace king in my range. I kind of think, I'm sure the reason I bet is because I thought you have the hearts that'll call, the queens that'll call, which, there are hands that he calls, but given the range that I've constructed here, I don't think he's going to have as many hands to call. So if I bet, he has to call with all of these pairs, which would be 100% of his range. But if I bet, I could see him possibly folding all of those pocket pairs and only continuing with top pair and maybe middle pair. So maybe that's 50%. So maybe I do need to bet those. But we'll continue and say that was my C betting range. He calls. We'll say he calls with middle pair plus. So let's get this range going. This was ace of hearts, queen of hearts, 2 of spades. Their flop range is that. So that's 49.5. And that represents 53 combos. My flop range is this. 53.5, and I have 182. So we're going to take this out. We're going to take these off and just see what our flop equity was. So my range was 49.9, and they had 51.1. So they have our equity edge right now. But I do have range advantage. I've got nut advantage. I don't think he has aces, queens, or ace queen. So just going off of these ranges, we see the turn. Whoops. So we bet, he calls. Three of spades. So now three of spades, if he calls, he obviously misses the flush, but I don't have the hearts in his range. So I think he probably has a pair. And the question is it the queen or is it the ace? And if he has the ace, how big is this kicker? He limped, so it's probably one of those mid to small kickers. So if he checks here, which I think he does with 100%, then it comes to us to say, what is he going to fold? So we had three of spades on the turn. Our range is 31.1. His range is 68.9. So what do we bet? I think we continue betting top pair. That's at ace 4, ace 5, ace 6. I think two pair bet, sets bet. I think, we're looking to get value out of those hands. Obviously, the heart didn't get there. I think one of the bad things for us is for us to bet and then get raised. But I think that's gonna be a risk. Our bet here would be something like 20, maybe 25 big blinds. We're gonna try to get some pressure, try to get some value out of it, because I do think if he has an ace, he'll probably call it. So like these low aces are more for bluffs. Let's change those. That's better. I think those are going to be a little bit more for bluffs. Maybe value if he calls with queens. But we're kind of hoping that he's just gonna fold some of those, or calls with queen, calls with the hearts. Which again, I don't think he has a whole lot. I checked, and that means what we're gonna do is this: take out all of these and give us that. So that's going to be mine, which makes our range even worse. And things are not looking good. Whoops. This is 44.3. 78 combos. Their turn range is this. That's 100% with 41 combos. And then 8 of hearts. He checks again. And I check. So once he checks, I really don't think. I think we're just gonna do some showdown value. We could obviously bet for a set, but you think about it, if he has the heart, he just called. What hands are gonna call us here? We check the turn. I kind of think the flush would have bet here. So I don't think we're beat if we have a pair. If we have a pair or better. So let's see what he has. I think I probably misplayed it. So I showed the ace king. He shows ace 9. So I think in his range he did have that top pair hand, ace 9, and I think we lost out on some value. And I think I lost out on some value because I c-bet. So go back to the flop. I said ace king checks here. I do think if I bet here, he calls. He did. If I bet the turn, I think it's more likely that now he could fold ace 9. He's going to think I have ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10. Those are all in my range. I think we give him a reason to fold. And he doesn't really pick up any other equity. Yeah, so he doesn't really pick up any other equity. So with the ace king, I think if I check the flop, and on the 3 turn, if he bets, I can call on the turn. And then on the river, he'll probably check, and then he'll call a bet. So we go from getting 1 street of value in this hand as played to getting 2 streets of value. And I think with that kind of hand, we're looking at let's redo this. We are going to check all of these. So bet all of those. We're going to check those other aces. We're going to bet pocket pair, below top pair, middle pair. We're going to have 2-card backdoor flush draws. All right, so we're checking. We're going to have no made hand there too. So let's X out the flush draws so we don't have them in our range. So none of those. All right, so we got our 2-card backdoor flush draws. We check there. 3 of spades hits. And then I think once that hits, now we bet our top pair hands. Oops, hold on. 2-card backdoor flush draws. We have to get those out because we were going to bet those. Yep. Okay, so we got our top pair. I think we're going to bet some 2-pair. Never mind. 2-pair shouldn't. Ace, queen shouldn't have been there. We have everything else. Yes, we have everything else, I think. Okay. So now we're going to bet top pair. I think we're going to bet kings. Because I think if we check, we encourage queens now to call. And possibly call, it's once or twice. Middle pair, I think we can bet some for value. It's kind of like a delayed c-bet. Weak pair 3, probably not. I think we bet the turn flush draw and our gut shots. So I think we do have, we are definitely more value. So 3-1 in value, which is probably a little bit too much. I mean, we could say pocket pair below that second card is a bluff. We could say the weak pair is a bluff. We can also say no made hand, which is basically betting 100%. So we check, and then he checks again on the turn. We just bet 100%. Maybe that's the way to go. And then if he calls, he could have a draw. He could have an ace, could have a queen. Since we initially checked, he could have, some of these pairs that jacks, 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s. And then the 8 hearts, I don't think we can be scared of the heart draw. And then we just look at it and say, okay, well, what if we bet what hands are going to call? I think since we showed weakness on the flop, if he calls the turn, he could have an ace or a queen. Would he call another bet? Depends on the size. I think the larger the size, the less likely he is to call those queens. So, larger sizing probably needs ace, king, ace, jack. Smaller sizing with maybe the lesser aces, ace 7, ace 9, kings could probably bet for some value. Middle pairs could bet for some value. Definitely king, queen, queen, jack, but I'd probably bet a little bit smaller. So say half pot for the middle pairs. We'll say half pot for the middle pairs. Maybe 2/3 pot for the ace, king, ace, jack. 2/3 for 2-pair. You can see we're at 45-20. Weak pair, I think we just check behind and hope our weak pair holds up. So I think that's probably the better way to play. I'd have to try it to see how it holds up, but yeah, we're giving up the hearts, but You know, he limped and then he called a fairly big pre-flop raise, so I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of suited connectors in there. I think he's going to have those suited aces, pocket pairs, maybe some big broadways, but not a huge number of combos. All right, so this is our hand. Maybe I played it right. Maybe I played it wrong. Maybe the analysis is right or wrong. Who knows? But it's got to be practice. Kind of have to think through it. Kind of have to think through what our plays are going to be for each of these hands. And I think if we're looking for highest EV, I think checking the flop with top pair, solid kicker, is going to allow us to get 2 streets of value. Whereas if we bet the flop, we might get 1 street, but probably not 2, because I think queens are just going to give up at that point. Versus checking flop, then I think queens are going to call turn and river. All right. If you like this, look tomorrow for another hand.